Hey, everybody, welcome and happy
Hold on,
November.
Stephen. Sorry, I think we have to do that again because I didn't record the cloud because I'm not a host.
Okay, hold on.
Sorry.
It's all right. So hold on, we're gonna make there.
And can you also make me a co-host? Thank you.
Did it. Hey, everybody, welcome. Happy November 8 or maybe November 9, depending on wherever you are. I'm Stephen Neely. I'm your co-host for the virtual Dalcroze meetup, and I'm sitting in the sun. Look at that. Look at that sunlight on November 8th in Pittsburgh. If your home is not this sunny on November 8th in Pittsburgh, you should come to Pittsburgh. That's what you should do because we're living it up over here. It is really nice to be together with everyone. At least at the moment, we have a smaller group, but we know that a number of people actually reached out to say they wanted to watch, but they're going to have to watch it after the fact because of either the time zone or just how it hits in their work schedule. So we are really excited to have this crowd of people in the room with us, and everybody else, we missed you and we look forward to seeing you again. Today is our next to last meetup of the year. We get one more in a couple weeks after Helene Nicolette's masterclass, which is coming up quite soon. And so we're just getting in a little bit more great work here before we all take a little break for the holidays and all. I think we will do our tradition, which is to have a quick breakout room where everybody can introduce themselves. There it is. And say hi. So when we get to the breakout room, if you're so willing, please say hello, tell everybody your name, say where you're located, and tell everyone who do you teach, or who do you wish you taught, or who did you used to teach? And now, so tell us a little bit about your teaching. And then you got a full 3 minutes to get through everybody in your group, and then we're going to call you right back. So get ready, set, say hi to your friends. Hey everyone, we're back, and we're back with the characteristic smiley faces after that breakout room session. Seems to always be the case, which we're so pleased at. I want to introduce Veronica Bileski, if you've not been here before. Veronica and Emma Shubin are my co-hosts. Veronica, we have a little announcing to do.
Yes, we have one more masterclass with Helen Nicolay this weekend. No, is it this weekend already? It's this weekend, either Saturday or Sunday, depending on where you live. And it's going to be really lovely. So I'm excited to see you all there. And then we have one more meetup, and then we'll say goodbye to 2021, and we'll see you all in 2022. I don't know how time flies, but it does.
Craziness. Emma, do you want to say hi? And tell us a little bit about Helene.
Hello, everybody. If you don't know Helene, you will be delighted. She has a fantastic movement background. She did a whole year of her life at the La Bon Institute in New York City. She is like a child of the Institut Jacques Dalcroze. She started taking when she was a baby there and went all the way through, and then eventually trained as a teacher trainer, and she is a diploma holder. And I believe that she's one of she's on the collage, and she is an assistant. I don't want to speak out of turn, but I know that she does a lot of work on the admin side of things as well, and helping run the school and the programs. And so if you've done anything over in Geneva, you've certainly seen her face as part of the organizing work and the forces behind the scenes. And she's a delightful human. She has a brand new baby. She's really excited. I think this is one of her first workshops back. And we're going to definitely learn a lot. She's a beautiful cellist. That's her first instrument. And she's a really wonderful improviser at the piano. She plays in a jazz combo, which I don't know if a lot of people know that, but her and I geeked out about that for one summer and got to exchange tunes and stuff. And she's fantastic. So I think you'll really enjoy getting to have a class from her, and don't miss it because it's going to be great.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that. Well, today we've got three really wonderful folks with us. I love all three of these people. I couldn't be more pleased and proud to, for us to have enticed them to come and just share a couple minutes with us, each one. Veronica, who's first on our agenda?
We're going to hear from Cheng Feng, and then from Dawn, and then from Patrick. And so we'll do your presentations all in a row, 5 minutes each, as close as you can to that. And then we'll have a rich discussion afterwards. And Patrick, yes, I got your email that Patrick is unable to stay for the discussion.
Very good. Cheng Feng, you're first.
Okay. Okay. So, well, I thank you, Veronica, for suggesting the idea to come and speak a little bit about my experience, the participation at the most recent ICDS event, the International Conference of Doppler Study. I believe that's what it stands for. It was online this time. And so my group, I was part of the Toronto Plastic Anime group, and there are 5 of us. So 5 of us, we got together and we present something called, the title is called Breathtaking. And so hence the title Breathtaking in the description of today's discussion. So 5 of us, we got together at the beginning of lockdown, just to, to get together and share, checking in with each other how it goes. And I am the only rhythmician, and there's one modern dancer, yoga teacher, and a utonist, and a flutist. And of course, when we share what happened with us, the uncomfortable feeling of the mask, whatever, all these type of stuff, we never just talk about it. We would end up create something out of it, well, we would move, improvise. And when the theme of the conference comes together, we decide to continue weekly not to rehearse, but just to explore different ideas that relating to our daily experience throughout the pandemic. And so towards the end of our exploration, towards about 3 months before the conference, we decided, okay, that's it. We have to start to pick out those themes, because each one of us would lead something together during the week when we get together. So we come into several themes. One theme is restriction, the idea of restriction. So I'm sharing with you what we did in the workshop. That the one idea is restriction. And so the idea of being confined at home, or when we have to teach, limit to the screen space. So we did a lot of movement improvisation, moving within with idea of restriction. Either we're tied onto the wall, or we're improvising a short movement piece between the door frame, or we try to work with the frame of the camera. So that was that we led through that during the workshop. And then we also worked on the ideas of nature. Although we are having, and we also discovered that breathing is one center idea that runs through everything. From the idea of having mask on, having trouble to breathe, and having to struggle to take a breath, and with all these various symptoms with the COVID, and it's all related to the breathing. And then we go outside to the nature. I know it's so obvious, but we just had this idea. We sometimes meet outside. We meet in a park with physical distancing and explore the branches and trees, and we discover, oh my goodness, the trees breathe, the branches breathe, the leaves breathe, and we start to take down that exploration. And we've come up with this quotation from a poet, anonymous poet. It says, the trees and the branches are the musical instrument of the wind. And from there, we take the parallel that our body then is the musical instrument of our breath, because it's the breath that runs our body, that takes our movement somewhere, that shifts our energetic state, that shifts our awareness, shifts our intentions. And so from there we explore that theme in the workshop. And on my part, the third part of the workshop, I decided to let through some exploration of how Jacques Dalcroze use breath as exercises, in his plastic.
minute.
Well, yes.
1 minute. Keep going.
Just one more minute. Okay. So yes, the plastic anime exercises and playing with breathing in and pause, breathing in further and pause creates a lot of tension in the diaphragm, and then the release. So I taught a short segment on that piece, and with a piece of music written by him from March Rhythmic, the corresponding piece that goes with the plastic exercise. Yeah, so that's the quick summary of the workshop.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Can't wait to talk more about it. Yes. I believe that Dawn is next.
Hello, I attended Cheng Feng's workshop at the IECDS, and it was really awesome. And some of the things he said relate to what I'm going to talk about, which is last summer, after Black Lives Matter and all the changes going on in our country and in the world, protests and whatnot, I was wondering what the DSA was going to do in terms of addressing it or writing up a statement, because I read up a lot of statements from like national music organizations and national dance organizations. And Bill Bauer, the president of the DSA at the time, said, why don't we have a discussion group to talk about these things, which made a lot of sense. And some of the reading that I'd been doing, which recommended that we do our own processing about our own experience of racism, white supremacy, sexism, all the isms, that the more we know about our own experience, the better we can make choices and think about what to do as organizations. So that kind of got us started in this monthly, we call them Undoing Racism in Music Education, monthly conversations. And the reason it connects with Cheng Feng's talk is that I'm also part of another group called Dancing Reading Online. And these are dancers who for the last 5 years have been meeting monthly, and we have been exploring material that we read, in particular on racism and diversity, through movement and sound. So that connects to what Cheng Feng was saying, and that kind of underlies my experience of thinking and expressing and experimenting and playing with some of the material. So we started meeting in August of 2020. We meet for 1 hour once a month. It's kind of narrowed down to a small dedicated group, and the conversations are personal. There are a lot of readings that I've been collecting and accumulating that I have on a document, which I'll put in the chat when I'm finished talking. I have gotten a lot out of this organization called Decolonizing the Music Room. And that term, decolonizing, is very provocative. And there's a range of people writing and thinking about this. And I've been looking at all of those people, sharing these documents with our monthly group. But most of what I experience is my own personal reading and studying. And then really as a participant in our monthly discussions, I'm mostly just a witness and a facilitator and a moderator. But this range from, I want to say, Robin, from her white fragility, sort of extreme, and the 16, the project that says to rethink our history and look at all of our racism, sexism in our history and really talk about it, apologize for it, take ownership for it, versus and then there's this at the other end of it are people saying, no, do not teach critical race theater, do not change what we already teach. And then there are other people who are kind of in between. So all that to say, our conversation focuses on music education. And within that, looking at white supremacy in music education and looking at our repertoire, looking at the racial mix of our teaching faculty and the racial mix of our students' body and see if they are not.
1 minute, Dawn.
And some people in the meeting have expressed some personal learnings that have occurred for them. And then not the final, but the next stage of it, I have to admit I'm very confused about all this, and I think that that's as it should be in a lot of ways, because it's a confusing process, and I'm learning a lot. Judy Bond from the Alliance for Active Music Making. This is an organization that pulls together Dalcroze, Orff, Kodály, and Gordon methods. And their purpose is to get more of that, she calls it active music making, into music education trainings. She asked if a representative from each of those organizations could form a panel, and we had a short panel, half-hour panel at the Mountain Lake Consortium, which is a music education thing. After that, we decided that, we were enjoying meeting these organizations and talking about what we're doing organizationally, and it's all in process in terms of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And we did another panel at the ICDS, which lasted for 90 minutes. In addition, we had a task force that came out of our monthly discussions that met last spring, and that task force made recommendations to the DSA regarding strategies. We wrote a DEI statement. I think it still needs tweaking, but you can see all those things on the Dalcroze website. The DEI statement, that's how we first started doing this. It's why we first started.
Hey, Dawn.
Yes.
We would love to hear more. I'm just mindful that Patrick actually has a time crunch. And so maybe if we could put a pause right there, hear Patrick, and then we're happy to come back to this. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Patrick Syria, if I haven't met you all. Nice to see everybody that I know again. I too presented at the ICDS, and my presentation was on my experiences. I earned my elementary Dalcroze certificate in 2007, and in that time period between then and now, I've spent a vast majority of my teaching career working with students with varying degrees of special needs, as well as at-risk inner city kids. And I teach in a public school district now. It is a county public school district. What we do is we bring kids in from school districts within our county, as well as some from outside our county, and we provide special and alternative education programming and resources. And I teach in 3 of the schools in our district. One is a self-contained school for students on the autism spectrum. The second is a school for children with developmental and physical disabilities. And then the third is a middle/high school for at-risk inner city students with behavioral and emotional classifications. And what I spoke about at the ICDS was my theory and my belief is that Eurythmics is a wonderful way to teach, because it has allowed me the abilities to come up with Eurythmics inspired lessons and approaches that I can use with all of these different students across the board with very little tweaking and very little adjustment. So as an example, I could take an exercise in a game that I use with my developmentally and physically disabled students and use the same exercise in a classroom full of at-risk inner city high school kids, and I get the same feedback and the same results. The other thing that I'm very passionate about is I believe that Eurythmics training should be given to all teachers, not just music educators. And what I spoke about at ICDS was the reason for this is, as we all found out during the pandemic, teaching has always been a creative and dynamic profession. Today, teachers have to be more creative and more dynamic. Right now in the United States, 14% of the American public school population is special needs kids. That's 7.3 million kids nationwide who come to school every day and need some type of special education services. In addition to that, Pre-COVID, the rates of anxiety and depression amongst American public school children was on the rise. We all know now that it's going to increase post-COVID-19 as we kind of get into that. And then the third reason is, and I have personal experience with this, right at the end of this summer, as we were getting ready to go into this school year, we had a flood here in my region of the country in New Jersey. And it destroyed one of the schools I teach in. It destroyed the entire building. There was 4 feet of water that went through the entire school building. Every classroom got trashed, everything got taken away. And we were told, you have to go back to remote learning. They were able to find another school building for us, which we moved into, but this school building had nothing in it. It was an old Catholic school building. It had no IT infrastructure, nothing. All of the teachers, we had lost all of our teaching materials. So we went into this building with a blank slate. I, thank heavens, was able to fall back on my Dalcroze training and was able to just kind of pick up where I left off. But my other teaching colleagues, many of them are still struggling because they lost all of their teaching materials in the flood. They're trying to get stuff back. And so again, my theory and what I believe is Eurythmics is a wonderful method and system of teaching, not just for music educators, but for all educators. And as the education world continues to change around us, and we're all experiencing that, I think that there's really no better proof of the power of Eurythmics. I know me personally, teaching for a year remotely, I was actually able to get through to all my students. Parents sent me like amazing videos of their kids moving to my classes in their kitchens, in their hallways. So it was really nice to know that these methods and stuff that I'd been taught and the Eurythmics translated across remote learning. And so I was just really happy about that. So that was my presentation at ICDS. If anybody has any more questions, I'll stay on for a little bit because like I said, I'm very passionate about it. I love to talk about the power of Eurythmics. The one thing I did say in my ICDS presentation is I believe very, very strongly that the definition of, along the lines of what Dawn was saying, the definition of music education in the United States needs to be broadened. It shouldn't just be band, chorus, orchestra, general music class. I think Eurythmics should become a huge and significant piece of that. My kind of vision is, and I know this may be pie in the sky, but a Eurythmics teacher, in addition to music educators, a Eurythmics teacher in every school as kind of a roaming presence who can go to classrooms and help classroom teachers, who can help music teachers, who can help the speech therapists, who can help the occupational therapist. Because I do a lot of that in my work in my school district, and I know it's effective, and I know the power of Eurythmics. So that's what I really, really talk about and I'm passionate about. So
Thank you so much, Patrick.
That's so good. Oh my gosh, our cup runneth over today. It's just too much. It's too easy to have things to ask questions or to comment on. I'm just gonna, before Patrick leaves, I'll chime in. When he said occupational rehab, what was the other rehab that you said?
Speech therapy.
Speech therapy, that was it. I just love so much that you're thinking in those terms, and that we are now more and more starting to recognize just how very relevant our sort of more traditional work is in those kinds of settings. Jacques Dalcroze wrote about it. They didn't have the words for those same things back then, but he talks about smoothing the temperament of the students, that anybody would sort of get involved in the work, the idea of body-mind connection, like the kinds of wording that was going on. When my sons, who are now in their 20s, when they were young and were starting to learn to read, we would sit down with them at bedtime, and we'd all take our little turns reading. And so one of our routines was, I'll read to you and now you read to me. And we'd sort of trade either sentences or paragraphs or and then eventually whole books. I'd read a book and they'd be reading a book, we'd sort of in parallel. And at the beginning, there was often a threshold where they could sound out words well enough to make the word, but they had no fluency to understand what they were saying. So they'd word words, but they were all like individual little words. And then I'd say, what did you just read? And they'd have no idea. And then I would go back and read it in a gait. And so I would read it in a way that to me had the eurythmic, the good flow to it. And then I would read the same words they just read, but with flow. And then they would read it back to me with flow. And then all of a sudden they would know what they said. They could like, it all of a sudden made sense. And I always blamed that little insight on my part to my eurythmics training. Like, I don't know how else it would have made sense to me, but I got, oh, what you're doing does not have any actual felt flow to it. It's all too separated. And so looking for ways of sort of including that in our classrooms is something that is applicable absolutely everywhere and really with all ages. That's my little rant. Who's got something they want to ask or comment on with the whole crowd? We had 3 great presentations. Anyone? Question or comment? I could keep talking. I got more, but the sun's catching up to me again.
Say along the lines of what you were saying, Steve, and along the lines of what you were just saying, I have one class in my school for autistic children where it's a small group. It's 5 students, and none of them can speak. They have no verbal abilities at all. One can hum a little bit. So I had to come up, and I know Cheng Feng was talking about this. I had to come up, and this is total because of my rhythmics training. How can I get them to be in the music class? They can't sing, and some of them even have movement problems because with autism, there's attributes like low muscle tone and things like that. So I had to go to like small movements, and just me humming and moving my finger or drawing a curved line on the blackboard and having them come up and trace it while I sing, it just allows them that kind of sensory experience. You know, they're identifying that little movement through the sound of my voice. And that those kinds of ideas were just a byproduct of eurythmics training, you know. And like speech therapists are coming in all the time and they see these things. And then we started doing things together, and it's like to me, it's a natural fit. And so that's why I believe that the message needs to be sent out there, because it's I experience it. I'm lucky enough to experience it every day, you know. But the movement piece is huge in my teaching, because so many of the kids are not vocal, or they have you know, limited faculties. So
So good. Mary, did I see your hand? And then yes, and then Dory, we'll ask you.
Let's have Dorita.
Okay, go for it, Dory.
I have 2. I have one comment and one question. My comment is for Patrick. You might want to pick up my book, Eurythmics for Autism, because there's a lot of information there on how exactly you can use eurythmics with autistic kids.
Yeah, I've read it twice. I've read your book twice.
Oh, you read it twice. I'm giving a test tomorrow. But here's a little side off the track a little bit, but I would like opinions. In the last month, I have returned to the piano. That's it. I've gone back to playing, and I belong to a group here in Durham called Presto, made up of only pianists who play piano avocationally, but play. And many of them have been trained. Very few recognize the word Dalcroze, and I keep spouting. But here's the problem. I am wondering whether Dalcroze is teaching music, piano improvisation to students in music conservatories, because they are absolutely not trained and they are terrified to improvise. And I've had two members of this group of adult pianists who asked me what kind of exercises can they do to begin to play by ear and do harmonic progressions and improvise. And I was pretty astounded. I don't remember when I didn't improvise. So I'm wondering what the role can be further in Dalcroze to be very involved in training instrumentalists in music improvisation, not just movement. I'm done.
Very good. Thank you, Dory. And kudos for getting back to the keyboard. It's just wonderful to hear that. I think we certainly believe that any traditional Dalcroze training is going to have all sorts of layers of improvisation weaved through it, whether that's vocal improvisation, movement improvisation, improvisation at the piano, and depending on the situation, hopefully improvisation at whatever anybody's individual instruments are. So, I mean, it's in my understanding and experience, of course, it's a full third of the full work. And so, we're always looking for ways to get that in. There are a handful of sort of within reach opportunities for new improvisers who are looking. One, I just was in New York. I was telling Patrick right before we started, I was in New York this last weekend, had lunch with Leslie Upchurch, and Leslie reminded me that she just published a little online course for beginning improvisation, which was also hosted, a version of this hosted by the Dalcroze Society of America recently. So there's a little online course for like brand new improvisers. And Leslie's amazing at making it absolutely approachable to anybody. Well, if you don't even play the piano, she can get you improvising at the piano. And the ideas that are in that course, I'm sure, are applicable to different instruments as well. So there's one idea. I'm sure we have other ideas here in the room. Who's next to either add on or pivot? Melissa.
I know Mary had something to share. Mary, are you? No? Okay, well, I'll just say, Dorita, I just want to say, you might be happy to know that at Longy School of Music of Bard College, where I am a Dalcroze faculty, all students have a requirement to take improvisation. So,
Brava!
yes, brava. And I teach several of those classes. One is ensemble improvisation class for any instrumentalist. And I've also taught improvisation for pianists. And of course, they have options of taking jazz. So yeah, I'm totally not only on board for improv for conservatory students, but hey, I teach improv, and probably many of you do, with my piano students. Even, very, very beginning students, I get them improvising. So I think that, yes, improvisation is so important, and should not be just for jazz players and Dalcroze people. Everyone can have fun. If you can talk, you can improvise. That's what I say. So Dorita, yay. I just want to also say, Cheng Feng, it is such a pleasure to see you again. And I wanted to ask you, Cheng Feng, if you might point me in a direction of where I might learn more about Dalcroze's work with breath, because I've only heard little tiny bits on that, and I haven't done research myself on it, but I feel like, wow, that's something that I seem to have missed. And I don't see many people using those whatever exercises there are in their Dalcroze classes. I did read that in one of Delcro's books that he would often start people on the floor just breathing. I rarely see people do that in the classes, so I'm fascinated with bringing more breath into the Delcro's work. So Chengfeng, if you have anything to add, I would be very happy to hear.
Certainly. So, how do we begin? Breath is so rich. Uh, it's okay. So I will just tell you the factual parts of it, the factual parts where I find these resources, and then we can perhaps get into some discussion. Where I found the information was on the Plastic Anime textbook written by Jacques Dalcroze. In there, it's a book full of exercises that I can show you the cover. Oh my gosh. Okay, I have many things on my piano stand. Oh, here we go. This is the cover. The plastic anime exercises, and they're just lessons after lessons on developing body technique, bodily expressions. That's where you will find the resources for 20 gestures, which I know at Longi with Adriana and Eiko, they did a lot of that. And also definitely breathing. He would be very deliberate. I think he was in a very, he was in a very experimental period of his life. And he would work with, breathe out for a certain number of the counts or measures, and then with this crescendo, and then breathe out with a breathe in with he would just play with these dissociation exercises, with breathing in relation with dynamics, breathing in relation with intensity of the chord progression. He had a lot of those exercises. And in this exercise I picked because it was related to the theme of pandemic. We're having trouble taking breath, or people took their last breath, or there's a feeling of inhibition of breath, which that's another fascination of Dalcroze, inhibition and encetation. So there's this breathing halfway and breathing further, and pause, and finally a release, of which he expressed in this short movement pattern. And I explore it in the workshop, and that's from this exercise. And each of those exercises, it would come with a corresponding short piano pieces that he composed. You can find them at Marche Rhythmique or esquisse of them that he composed. So this, and he, often at the end of those exercises, he will put a little note. It goes with this number, this page, number 31 of the Marche Rhythmique, and things like that. And I have to thank Selma for the score, because I'm happy to just send this. Let me just attach the file here so you all have a copy, so you get to see what it's like. Thanks to her, I'm sure you all know Selma, who comes here a lot. So she shared with me the score of this particular exercise because of the publication years, and I have a copy of the Marche Rhythmique, but then it's not always, the page doesn't correspond. So I had a big mystery there, and she just handed me this score. And so that's that. But the more I read into this, I'm just, due to the interconnected nature of Dalcroze in all the branches, rhythmic, solfege, improvisation, plastic anime, pedagogy, and all this, I'm not surprised. This morning I was rereading the Rhythm, Music, and Education over morning coffee. It's very geeky of me to read such things in the morning. That's a confession. I don't like to admit that, but I do read these things in the morning.
I think you're among friends here. Don't worry.
Okay, no. I read these things. So I was really surprised and happy to find this what he wrote on page 72 of this Rhythm, Music, and Education 1921 publication. this is under the chapter 5, where he outlined particularly the entire curriculum of his work, rhythmic solfege improvisation. Here, under the application on exercises in rhythmic movement to the study of solfege, the very, very first thing he actually just wrote: contraction and decontraction of the muscles of the neck and the breathing muscles. And he also goes on to talk about the importance of a rhythmic gymnastic for the lungs and study of different methods of vocal attack and enunciation of consonants. That tied into the reading speech part that Patrick was saying, and the conflicting movements of shoulders and diaphragms. So he was fascinated with how those contraction and decontraction of the muscles and diaphragm and breath would influence the vocal. That's the very first thing of the solfege study, before all these wonderful inner hearings and polyrhythm and all these stuff. But that's the first thing, because the breath is so important in support of the vocal quality and vocal intention. And he did say ear training alone will not make the child love the music. It's in that physical sensation and tangible felt sense that, accompany with singing recognition, that bring home to the individual. So here I will just attach, I've been saying I'm attaching it, but I'm not doing it.
Thank you so much, Cheng-Feng. That's such good information. Melissa, if you look back at I think it was just the very last meetup, just the most prior one, Selma spoke a little bit about this agenda as well, which is partly how we were reminded that, oh my goodness, we got to get Cheng-Feng in here. And so, because she talked about her collaboration with Cheng-Feng, so she also mentions this project a little bit and talks a little bit about the work. And we're going to have them back. Cheng-Feng might not know, but we're going to have them back to do even more, to help us, all learn a little bit more about this work. Thank you, Patrick. Thank you so much. Have a good day of teaching. Dawn, I'm going to pivot just a little bit, because I want to talk just a little bit more about what Dawn's agenda has been as well. It's such important work and such difficult work coming out of sort of old traditions and old assumptions, and and yet recognizing that there is a real mandate. I mean, a real timely, a bit of responsibility, a real ethic to take the time to consider, where are we, where have we been, and what sort of steps might we be implementing as we're going forward. And so, I know that you don't believe that it was just you, but we do applaud you and applaud the whole initiative. I had the pleasure of making it to the beginning of a couple of those sessions. And I really just felt that the conversation was humble and rich, and really just sincerely sort of truth searching and curious, and just trying to see where are we. Do you have any? I'll put you on the spot just a teeny bit. In the conversation, now that you've gone through this a bit, was any of the conversation, or do we have anything in that conversation that we thought was more specific to the Dalcrozians? Like, is there any, or did you feel as though the conversation was more like, no, this is just the conversation of music education? Were there any parts of that conversation that sort of either hit home more or seemed more relevant, or were more specifically sort of tied to our Dalcroze agenda? Or no, this is just a very general conversation?
I can say a couple things about that. Frequently, people talked about the accessibility of Dalcroze as a fabulous tool for diversity, because it can cross many boundaries, and we all have a body, we all have breath, and so it brings everyone to the same playing field. That came up a lot. But also, that said, sometimes we think that we invented the body-mind connection or the body-music connection, and really people have been integrating movement and music for many generations and many cultures. So, when I first started talking about this, people's responses were often, yes, we have to bring the Dalcroze work to more people, which is which is a colonial approach to things. And that's something I think we just need to keep remembering, that colonialism is about saying what I have is really great and I think everyone else has to have it too. And there's also a big selfish capitalist part of that, which I don't think Dalcrozians have that. And I think so the idea that we do have something unique and wonderful, and the tools are accessible to many people, and it brings diversity, as Patrick was talking, people with special needs, etc., people that are nonverbal, etc. And we come out of the Western Eurocentric universe. And I think we just need to keep understanding that that's not everyone's universe, or that's not everyone in the world's universe. And the idea, that white supremacist piece, which says classical music's the best music, that classical music is the highest music, that's something that we need to, keep in check, keep asking about, keep talking about. Does that get at your question?
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that. Melissa?
Yeah, I just can't help but add on, Dawn, that I was fascinated. I'm slowly watching some of the sessions from the ICDS that I missed in person, and one that I watched was one that you, Emma and Veronica and Dawn were on, and I was really amazed by comments that a woman made at the end from Nigeria. And it was kind of toward the end of your session there, so you didn't really get into it, which was kind of a missed opportunity, I felt. Which she was saying how it was her first time connecting to Dalcroze, and she was amazed to see the connections of the Dalcroze approach to what she sees in the indigenous and the culture of her country in Nigeria. And she was saying, well, they just do it very unconsciously. And so, wow, there's an awful lot to look into there. I wish I had there had been more discussion about that. I didn't actually see that woman's presentation, but anyway, I hope to just open out our world more. I mean, our world is open, but we can so easily get locked into our own worlds here, and yeah, there's a lot to connect with and to realize. I mean, I'm still fascinated to find out more about what Jacques Dalcroze actually got from his experience in Northern Africa, because many of the Dalcroze ideas came from his time in Algiers, so anyway, there's an awful lot to explore, and I think we have to be sensitive, as Dawn's saying, about this, white colonial isms everywhere, but yeah, I hope to connect more with cultures in Africa, and how we meet. We meet in music and movement. We meet in joy. We meet in magic. All these wonderful qualities that were brought forward in the conference. Anyway, I'll let someone else talk. But
Thank you, Melissa.
A lot to look into.
Mary?
Hi, I know we've got to finish in a couple of minutes, but Cheng Feng, thank you very much for that. That was brilliant, and I also presented. I worked with Salma. I presented a workshop and a paper with Salma in the conference. I'm in London, but a theme that came up for me very much over the pandemic and that was present in the conference was the connection with nature. It was also evident in Catherine Kay's keynote speech, with trees as well, and that's something I would like to connect up. And also, yet again, a huge gratitude to Dawn Pratson, because Dalcroze UK, when Black Lives Matter happened, and I was thinking, well, how are we? Where is our statement from Dark Rose UK? And I was able to go to Veronica and Dawn and get support there to open up the conversations in the UK. And I'm now on the EDI committees of a conservatoire where I teach children, but for the whole board of and I feel like my ability to have the open and honest conversations through you, Dawn, have enabled me to have the confidence, in part, and other training that I've had to have helped me be involved in difficult conversations to affect change. So hugely grateful. Thank you.
So good. One of the things that I know we've enjoyed, and I maybe all of you have noticed this, but it's been we've said this many times at the BDM, but it's been such a joy to be able to connect with colleagues from around the world. And we're kind of at the point where it's like literally around the world, like all around the world. There have been so many different countries represented. And it's been just a real thrill to not only connect with colleagues that we knew but only saw every so often, but to make new connections and to be able to find colleagues in very different cultures and very different, in different continents, be able to come in. And it's been a real pleasure to have a little bit of a venue for that. We got 3 minutes. Anybody want to wrap this up? We got maybe one more? Did you see Kristen Register wrote in the chat there to remind us that the new Dalcrozian, Anthony Molinaro and Lauren Hartschen, have a whole episode on DEI. And so if you haven't been following that podcast, you should. It's outstanding. Dawn, you had a hand.
I just wanted to remind people that in the chat, I put a couple of documents. One is a link to a very, I think, pretty comprehensive resources of articles, videos, books, and stuff. And the other is the diversity, equity, and inclusion panel that I did with the Orff, Schulwerk, the Gordon, the Kodai people. It just kind of gives a little statement from each organization and the Alliance for Active Music Making. So
super. And that folder of references there, that's something that your committee has been pulling together, right? That isn't that listing. The monthly meetup here has been collecting from the very first day that they met, has been collecting resources and compiling them. And so you're not going to find that list on somebody else's bibliography. This is the bibliography that came out of that particular collection of conversations.
Right.
Well, there's so much. Dawn, is Pablo Freire, Pedagogy of the Oppressed, in that listing by any chance?
I don't think directly, but via a couple of other links.
Yeah. Well, at some point we'll have to pull that aside. Veronica, you can help me remember. Maybe one of the next times we have a lull and we need to fill up some time, we could talk about that whole world, because there's such amazing insight going on there and really applicable to anybody teaching in the schools. And so if we think about, we just start to loop that together. To me, as I read through those texts, there was so much that was quite relevant, not just as a teacher, but as a Dalcrozian teacher, working with bodies who are called upon to have a voice, who are, with bodies who are called upon to improvise, to lead, bodies that are that are treated as though they already have knowledge, rather than this sort of outside, I'm the all-knowing teacher and you'll just do what I say. That text and his thoughts were just pivotal for me. So we could extend this conversation talking maybe about some of that as we go. Well, friends, it is on the hour. And so I think we have done it again. Thank you so much to Cheng Feng and to Dawn and to Patrick for joining us and for taking just a couple minutes to let us in a little bit on the good work that they've been doing. We're so appreciative to be able to sort of extend the conversation. We will have all of you back. We will do everything in our power. Looking at you, Cheng Feng. We're going to have all of you back soon, and hope to have more chances. Emma, you got any announcements for us?
We have scholarships, friends. If you have friends who would like to come join us for this masterclass, they've never tried Dalcroze, they are feeling worried about finances. If you yourself needs any assistance, we want to make it possible, and we would really love to see you this weekend. It's going to be a special class from the mothership of Geneva, as it were, itself. So that'll be really great to hear a little bit about what's happening out there.
Yes, sign up. If you are not registered for Helene's class, do it and bring a couple friends. Those classes are all the more fun when there's a nice full screen of people. But there's also always the option of registering to watch it after the fact. Veronica, anything more?
Have a great Monday or a Tuesday.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.